to the Essential Scares podcast, the only show that dares to ask the question, is it essential? I am your host, Corbin, and with me as always is Alan.
Good evening, everybody.
And Bobby.
You don't forget the face of your father.
We have got quite a show for you today. We are going to be finishing off our Overlook duology with 2019's Dr. Sleep. But before we get into it, Bobby has a spoiler warning.
I do. This will serve as your first one and only spoiler warning for the movie Dr. Sleep. If you do not want this movie spoiled for you, please skip to the time code provided in our show notes or description for our essential spoiler-free discussion. You know, I've been thinking about this, and one of two things will be known about this movie. Time goes on. One, how Mike Flanagan can manage to make a really, really good Stephen King adaptation without abusing any of the actresses in this film. Or, we're going to learn a lot of really sad truths about Mike Flanagan later on. Alan.
It's either a really good story, or it's going to be a bad fall from grace.
It's either like, yeah, Mike Flanagan, wholesome guy, manages to be better than Stanley Kubrick because makes a great movie, but not in the same, but doesn't have to beat up Shelley Duvall along the way, or, oh my God, Ewan McGregor suffered irreparable damage.
I'm pretty sure it's not that.
Probably.
We don't know for sure is what I'm saying.
But I think we're more likely to know for sure but in today's market.
That's fair.
You're right, and I'm going to go with option A, but it'd be,
It'd be criminal of you not to bring it up as a possibility.
Yeah,
we have to cover all our bases.
Listen. I'm just asking questions here, folks. I'm just asking questions.
If there's anything you can lay at the feet of Mike Flanagan, it is that he uses the same actors in like everything that he does.
You know what?
And
That's
he's
right.
married to one of them. So
So what is this movie about, you may be asking yourself after 2 minutes of Flanagan slander?
Just asking
Our
questions.
story begins explaining who the True Knot, you'll find out that name a little later, is. They abduct children for reasons. This then kind of follows into, what happened to Danny and his mom post the events of The Shining. Danny has a pretty tough life. He's a kid who sees ghosts, and is even visited by one in the form of Dick Halloran to find out how to basically take care of the demons that follow him. Well, he couldn't escape those demons because, much like his father, he fell to he succumbed to alcoholism. And we then see Dan, many, many years later, absolutely on a bender of an evening, waking up next to a woman to only be haunted by her later in his life, too. Dan suppresses the Shining through the use of alcohol, only until he finally finds some help and some truly good people when he just takes a bus ride to the farthest place he can go with the money he's got. Alongside the Dan storyline, we have Abra, a girl of immense Shining power, who eventually attracts the attention of the True Knot, what are called the empty devils in the book and in the movie. These people who feed on steam or shine that come from people, usually children, and they choose to purify that steam in the most disgusting ways possible via torturing kids. And, of course, we have to have some conflict, bringing everything around with the True Knot finding a way to get to Abra, and everything always leads back to the Overlook. Let's open it from there. I fucking loved this movie. I'm just going to, again, kind of like last week where I just took the stage, I'm just going to do that again real quick.
Yeah.
This was wonderful. When I first saw that that Dr. Sleep was a thing, the book, I want to say I was actually up by you guys, and I went to a bookstore, and I saw Dr. Sleep, sequel to The Shining, Stephen King. And the first thought I had was, that seems like the most unnecessary sequel I've ever heard of in my entire life. And I thought that for the longest time until I read the book. And kind of similar here, it's like, well, a sequel to The Shining. You never think that would work, but then it ends up working out so well. because there's a lot here. That's I think is the key thing here is The Shining was a very complete thought, complete book, complete everything. It didn't necessarily need a sequel, but I'm very glad we got to find out more about this specific level, to know more about what's going on here, what happens to Danny as he grows older, how he has to deal with this immense power as a teenage kid. Like, there's a little bit more there in the book, but yeah, I just wanted to gush a little bit to start.
You just made me. I was gonna go on a different thought about. I didn't realize that Mike Flanagan's wife was the main character in Midnight Mass. But you just made me go on a completely other tangent.
Because I told you, because I said,
Yeah.
and he's married to one of them, and
Yes.
Bobby had to go, wait a minute.
I did.
Which
I
one
did
is
other
it?
tangent. The first time I learned about Dr. Sleep, this is like a very personal thing. I before I was into Stephen King, I dated a girl in college whose mother was super into Stephen King. And Dr. Sleep had come out, and it was a sequel to The Shining. Knowing nothing about The Shining, knowing nothing about Stephen King, I was like, she'll probably like that book. That'll get me in her good graces with her. And I gave it to her, and then I dumped her daughter that following Valentine's Day.
Big fan of that.
Or around that. Like, yeah.
Good job, Bob.
Yeah. It wasn't, it was a bad, it was a whole bad thing.
Yeah.
But
For me,
yes.
I mean, the book came out in like, what, 2013?
2013. Yeah.
And so we were in college then, and I knew that it was coming out, and I knew it was a sequel to The Shining, which was like intriguing to me because, similar to Alan, it's like I didn't really feel like that was necessary. I hadn't read The Shining. I still haven't read The Shining, which you all know if you listened to last week's episode. So I wasn't super interested in like just the straight up book because I knew that the movie wasn't, quite an adaptation it was very much adapted and changed, right? And I knew that. And so when the second book was coming out, I was like, well, I'm not going to read this because I haven't read The Shining yet. And then I kind of just forgot about it until the movie came out. And I don't know why I missed it in the theater, but I'm a little bit glad I did because now the only version that I've seen is the director's cut, which is the one that we all watched for the show, and is half an hour longer than the theatrical cut, which is awesome.
Not an ounce of fat on that extra half hour either.
Honestly, like I didn't realize how much longer it was until I was on IMDb after watching the movie, and I saw the theatrical runtime was half an hour less, and I was just like, man, like where'd that half an hour go? Like what happened? Where is that?
Where'd you cut? Yeah.
Yeah. And even the director's cut is the only one with like the chapter segmentation, which I absolutely love.
So good.
Really?
So good.
Huh.
Yeah. Yeah.
This movie kicks ass. This movie just kicks ass.
It's very good. It's
Yeah.
incredible. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just put all of that out in the front. We've all said it. It's a great movie.
I will say I watched this movie the same night. If you go back to our Prince of Darkness episode, that was the double feature. The last night I spent in my apartment in the downtown Chicago before I moved into the basement that you all know, and there's a house connected to this basement, but that's fine.
Wait.
I know, crazy, right? But I was recommended it. I was like to a very dear friend who, no doubt, one day we will find a movie that he'll want to watch that we'll want to do because he'll actually, I think, would be a really funny little guest to have. I'm pushing this on you guys, and you guys will tell me no behind the scenes, but we'll know that I made the suggestion live on the air. And he said, you should watch these two movies. This one is crazy cool, and this other one was really important to me on a very personal journey he was going through. So, Jack, I just want to say you were right for both of them. Both these movies fucking owned, and I did not sleep a wink the day before I was supposed to move out of my apartment, which was totally fine. This movie just kicks ass. It just fucking absolutely owns Bones. It somehow manages, Alan and I were talking about it before the podcast because Corbin was late for once. And, I have to throw that out there as well, too, because I'm usually the one that's late. But here we found out today that sometimes a broken clock can be right twice a day. That we were talking about how like this movie somehow manages to be a sequel to both the book and the movie. And insane. Absolutely insane. Let's talk about that, gentlemen, now that I have successfully burned the bridge with both of my good friends.
Yeah, so
Go
I'll say, as someone who understands that it is both an adaptation of the second book and a sequel to the first movie, it's kind of interesting as someone who hasn't read either of the books to try and think about, like, okay, what were the adjustments, right? Like, where did they change things? And so I did do some behind the scenes reading, so I know, after the fact what was changed. And knowing that it's largely the Overlook sequence at the end makes so much sense, because utilizing that set piece as like the big adjustment to the movie versus the book to tie in this movie to the first movie is just genius. I mean,
Exactly.
it is.
Oh, it's not the
it's kind
Overlook
of like
in the book?
No.
the Overlook in the book is gone.
The
There
way
is no
that The
Overlook in the
Shining
book.
ends, I'm gonna just spoiler for a 40-year-old novel.
I spoiled it for myself when I
Oh, he
looked this
burns it
up,
down.
so,
He
yeah.
burns it
So
down.
Jack, one of the big things they don't talk about in The Shining that they go over in like his interview process is you have to watch the boiler. It'll get creeping up on you if you don't pay attention. The Overlook explodes. That's how Jack actually dies in the book. It's a whole thing. The Overlook is destroyed.
It's
It's
Dan,
better in
Danny's
the movie.
moment.
The
It's Dan's
changes
moment
the
in this
end of
one
Dr. Sleep
is
wildly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
it's
yeah.
better. It's
Yep.
better in the movie. I would say,
Yeah.
just between the two, it's better in the movie. I don't care. It's better in the movie. Him freezing
So,
to death is a much more fun thing.
I think I kind of liked, honestly, like I liked the dual symmetry there, where like this movie gives Jack's final moments to Danny instead, and then also that in this one, by doing that, you have this like mirrored fates between the two, like fire and ice between him and his father, and kind of like they've explained a few times, they've compared like alcohol to fire, and like there's like an extra symbolism there, I think, with the alcoholism, which I really liked. But I love the way that they utilize the Overlook, because it kind of does this really great thing that a lot of sequels try to do, which is throw back to previous movies. But it does it in a way that's like almost exclusively filmmaking wise and not like in your face about the story. And I think watching The Shining last week and watching Dr. Sleep this week really made that super obvious, because there's so many shots that are exactly the same, and so many like angles, and so much like extra symmetry and little moments. And it's like, I've seen The Shining a lot of times, but I might have not realized just how perfectly done it was if I hadn't watched them basically back to back. It's just awesome.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So we live in an age where we've seen many a movie digitalize CGI people into films that are long dead or much older than they should be.
Yeah.
I so much more prefer finding actors that look kind of similar and just rolling with it, because
I agree.
Yeah.
it takes away that uncanny valley. I know that's not Jack Nicholson as Lloyd. I know it's not, but it's close enough. You really only see his profile. The voice isn't quite there, but it works. I get why they chose to do that as opposed to digitalizing Jack Nicholson's face from 1980 onto this guy.
I think
prefer
so here's what I think. I think the girl from Midnight Mass playing Wendy worked really, really well. I do not necessarily. It's the villain from
Was
Midnight
she
Mass.
in Midnight Mass?
Yeah, she's the villain
Was
from
it really?
Yeah, it's the villain from Midnight Mass.
Wow, I didn't
Yeah.
even
I didn't
recognize
make
her,
that
yeah.
connection at all.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh
I
yeah.
love that.
Oh yeah. The only reason I know
I
fun
think
fact,
she was great as Wendy.
the only reason I know that is because she does not look like herself in Midnight Mass, but in that Shudder's 100 scariest moments in horror, she looks much more like that. And I was like, who the fuck? It says she's in Midnight Mass. I looked it up. I was like, oh fuck, it's her, right? And she looks a lot like it. Yeah, but
she did a great job. Yeah.
the guy who plays Jack Nicholson, it feels too much like a Jack Nicholson impression to me personally. It doesn't fail. I want to say that it does not fail. I would have been fine if they would have gotten Jack Nicholson and CGI'd young Jack Nicholson and old Jack Nicholson's face. I think there would have been something there. I think that's the thing, is like Shelley Duvall's character is so iconic, but this is like one of the last things you've ever seen Shelley Duvall in, right? So you don't have all of those additional years of Shelley Duvall to be like, well, I don't know. But you have, like, you can't handle the truth, Jack Nicholson, that you kind of want to see him play Lloyd a little bit, I think. And
I liked it partially because I like that they had a couple of flashbacks to moments from The Shining.
Yeah.
And I really appreciated that they refilmed those moments.
Yes,
I'm so with you. Yep.
Because
that I
something
agree
that
with, yes.
It can definitely bug me sometimes is like when you've got a sequel and it's just showing clips from the previous movie.
Look at you, Silent Night, Deadly Night 2.
It's like, yeah, I was there. Like, you don't have to show me. And this movie does have a couple of those, right? There's a couple of establishing shots when they're going to the Overlook and stuff that are just ripped from the first movie, but they're like CG'd and adjusted, so it doesn't feel like that. But I'm really happy that they not only used new actors, which I think gives them a much wider range of things that they could do with those characters.
Yeah.
But that for the flashbacks, they like refilmed it. I think that was just a great. I much prefer it, and especially like now that we're in an age of like, deep fakes and like de-aging and stuff and changing people, and especially with Disney movies, and we're about to see this in a huge way with Indiana Jones 5 next year, because there's a big portion of the movie that is young Indiana Jones, and I know he's de-aged and it looks good in the trailer, but I wish that that was just recast.
Yeah.
Like I'm fine with just a new actor playing the part,
I did not mind Solo. I'm just gonna say it. Solo
I think
was
Solo is one of
exactly.
the better Star Wars properties that's came out in years. I'll
That
say
is a perfect example.
Crucify
It's like
me.
that.
I don't give a shit.
It was just better.
I don't disagree
it's a great
with you.
movie, and it was just better to have new actors in it.
It's a Jedi. It's the reason why Mandalorian could work is because Solo walked so Mandalorian could run. Like straight
That's
up.
absolutely true.
But I will say out of the three of them, Dick Halloran's actor. I'm looking it up right now. I'm gonna pretend like I was gonna be like, oh, I think his name is Carl Lumbly, but I looked it up. His name's Carl Lumbly. I'm looking at it right now. Fantastic job, right?
Yeah, I agree that he was my favorite.
He matched Scatman Carruthers in like a huge
perfect.
way. Yeah, perfect. Yeah. Perfect. Like he's the one where he doesn't even look remotely like Scatman Carruthers, but he sounds exactly the same, and that's
you
the
never
amazing
doubt
bit.
that it's
they
him,
don't
that it's
look
Halloran.
similar at all, right? Like Carl Lumbly's lips are not nearly thin and like up into his cheeks like Scatman Carruthers is, but you're like, yeah, that's Dick Halloran because he sounds like it. Like, and you're like, I loved it every time he's out there, and you feel safe no matter what. Even the scenes where he's like guilting Danny, you're still like, oh, Dick's here. Okay, everything is gonna be okay. Like,
I liked having him around too because like he was like the good ghost.
Yeah,
and I like that this movie introduces like good ghosts. It's not everybody's bad.
Well,
it explains having that element.
It explains why Danny can be Dr. Sleep, right? Because he's had Dick there to protect him and help him and guide him his entire life. Like, so he doesn't necessarily have this like complete darkness when it comes to ghosts, even though the majority of like, right, it's a lot like, again, I keep comparing these movies to the Insidious movies, but it's a lot like Lorraine is her name, right? Or right? What is
Lorraine?
What is Elise? Is that the
Elise
main
is
character?
the good ghost.
The
main character.
Like it's very much that thing, but obviously done well instead of poorly. Listen, you've given me two good movies that I enjoy in a row.
Bobby is gonna give us I was gonna be giving us like years of crap for that 3.5.
I listened to that episode again recently because I was looking for a pick me up. Because I thought, hey, it's a funny episode. We enjoyed ourselves there, and it broke my heart again because I could hear the actual just like sadness in my voice when I realized that you guys were gonna give Insidious: The Last Key a 3.5 out of 5.
It's not even that high of a score. I stand by that. It's not that high.
It doesn't deserve it, and you know it doesn't.
I stand by that score. I've said it now 2 weeks in a row. I've said it.
I stand by that. You're doing it specifically to spite me.
We should probably bring up some of the other characters, specifically Rose the Hat.
Oh, the true
Man,
knot.
I loved her so much.
Boy.
I love Rebecca Ferguson. Apparently, in everything after I've found her, and like
That's how I feel about Zan
she's
McLennan.
She's
McLarnon.
such a good actress, and she looks amazing. And like, I love how she is able to play such a sinister villain, without ever like resorting to caricature.
Yes.
I really, really liked that. And her character can so easily be a caricature. She's a kid killer who sucks people's souls. Like, that is a cartoon, but she never gets there, and I love that about her.
Yeah. It's amazing to me, the adaptation work that what many times watching this movie, I just go, they did their homework. Because like the characterization of not just Rose, but all of the other members. Some of the other members are a little more active in the book. Billy, for example.
That makes sense.
Or
Yeah,
Barry is a bit more. Well, and the knot itself is substantially larger in the book compared to. What we get in the movie is basically like the core characters. It would be like there would basically be a whole ensemble behind these specific characters. Like literally like about 20 other people that would, roughly speaking, be just scattered about doing
Alan,
whatever
I have a question. Would this be like if they only talked about the leader of the Big Coffin Hunters in a Wizard in the Glass spinoff?
It would be more because there's much more people than that. It would be like imagine actually yes. So imagine you just have the three of them and like all of the townspeople just aren't there. That's kind of the similar. Now, they don't have as much of an important role as them, but like they're there, they speak, they say things, they just develop who the knot is.
Yeah.
Speaking of, they suck the souls basically of children by torturing them incredibly brutally.
Yeah.
It is. So, if you guys remember back, Fear Street, I talked about how we needed to have more kids affected in horror. Well, this movie went, hold my beer. They viciously tortured this kid. And even when he's dead, they then like CPR press the rest of the steam out of his body just because they're so corrupted. It's insane.
Fun fact I know about this movie. Actually, the one thing Stephen King watched this movie, it like was one of the first people to watch this movie. The one note he said was the kid scene goes just a little bit too long. Like that's Stephen King
right.
saying that.
That
It
scene
was
is
tough. It was a tough watch.
Yeah, it's but apparently even in the director's cut, there's more of that scene somewhere out there.
I believe it.
Yeah, like
because I saw that in the behind the scenes that other actors there, like the kid did such a good job, like we're just like not able to handle that scene, and it's like surely they, knowing Flanagan and how he shoots and like the type of stuff he usually does, like that scene is probably at least 10 minutes long, right? That they trimmed down to like the 4 minutes that we got, which still feels excessive.
It never feels excessive, but it always is on. Like it's on.
Yeah, I don't mean
edge.
that in like a negative way.
It's on
like
the edge of excessivity,
like,
right?
excessive.
Like like it gets to the point where it's like I don't want to watch this anymore, but not to the point where you actually look away. And I think that is, I think that's just the genius of Mike Flanagan, and also probably a little bit of pushing of it. It goes a little bit too long for Stephen King. Okay, we'll cut 30 seconds off of this because the extra 30 seconds is too much. Like,
yeah. The other little bit of detail,
and he does do a great job, by the way. The kid does a great job. Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh yeah, great kid actor. One of the best kid deaths I've ever seen.
Oh yeah.
Some of the other little details that you don't get to get into with the True Knot as much. They've been around. I mean, they kind of talk about how they've been around for ages with Grandpa Flick, for example.
When Grandpa dies.
That's a big thing.
You've watched empires rise and fall, like
yeah. But the other thing is like, it's not just killing people that they get their power from. It's global events of death. There's specifically a part in the book where they like, we didn't know what was going to happen in September of 2001, but we knew there was going to be a problem near New York City. So they got...
So they had an orgy on 9/11?
Basically. Yeah.
That's
how terrible these people are.
Oh, I love
like,
it.
If there's going to be like a mass hurricane,
so
they'll be nearby.
So they were coming all throughout World War II.
Oh, absolutely. Well, that's the thing.
It was all,
again,
it was all cum and blood and cum and blood all throughout World War II for the true or not.
These people all have their own abilities, their own shine to them. That is how they get roped into the knot.
Yeah.
And one of those abilities is like sensing mass death.
They serve a
events,
purpose.
basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. To continue the knot. But yeah, they're comically evil, but never comically evil. Does that make sense? Like
because they are comically evil when you write down their stat sheet, but the execution makes them like normal in a way.
And it even feels that way in
that's
the book,
that's
too.
Stephen
Like,
King.
It's great.
Right,
Yeah.
but that's just Stephen King, right?
That
it's like, oh man,
because his villains are always like all the way past the edge.
Think
he writes them in a way that pulls it back.
Yeah, sincerely think about Pennywise, right? It's the clown that turns into the thing that you're most afraid of and then eats your fear, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, you've heard that a million times before, but all of a sudden you write Pennywise in a way that's like, holy fuck, what the shit? Like that, and then in the movie, both movie adaptations, you put Bill Skarsgård or Tim Curry on, and it's like, Jesus Christ, what the fuck? It doesn't matter anything else because you have a true villain, and the True Knot is a really good villain in this, and they lose at every turn, but you're still somehow afraid of them. Like that's like Rose the Hat, you're intimidated by the entire time, but like they never get the upper hand on Abra and Danny. Like, and even when they do, right, everybody dies. Right, like Crow Daddy is like the guy that you're like, oh man, he's got it.
Oh my god, I love that
Such a good
that scene with him in the car.
Well, and I loved Crow Daddy this entire movie. I'm like, he's
great.
He's calm, cool, collected, very clearly will do anything for Rose the Hat, and then like he's just like, yep. And what was it all for? My people died. Your people died. It doesn't even matter. And then all of a sudden, Danny's like, hey, I got this, and then just fucking murders him. It's like. It's just like, Jesus Christ.
It's literally perfect to the book. That's precisely what happens. It's great.
And it's so smart. It's such a smart thing. Because if you were a vampire who have lived for centuries, why would you wear a seatbelt? Nothing will kill you. You'll live forever. Like,
yeah.
Like, who gives a fuck? Seatbelts are an uncomfortability that we all suffer through being mortal. I will wear my seatbelt forever. It does not matter. But like, if I was immortal, yeah, fuck it. Fuck a seatbelt. I'll just suck the soul out of a child I torture murdered. It's fine. I got one in the back right now. Like.
You got a canister of steam just waiting there to suck that up and be ready to roll?
Literally,
why wear a seatbelt when you got a whole canister?
I have the strongest child we've ever sent drugged up in the back. I'm gonna suck the soul out of that kid so hard, and then I get thrown through a window. Like,
yeah.
Oh yeah, this movie just, I cannot stress to you guys just how good of a adaptation this is of the book Dr. Sleep. There's a few things you miss out on a little bit. Momo, for example, Abra's grandmother, much more apparent in the book. Is she even in
the movie?
No, she's mentioned, but she's much more
in the
of
hospital.
a character. Yes, but she also has the shine.
I figured.
It's lineage. See, parallels the other book.
Well, I know that's
sense.
a big element of the book also, is that like they confirm that Jack has had shine.
And they do it in the movie.
In the movies, between the movies, it's a strong implication, but they never really
Dick
spell
says
it out for you.
He has a light. He had a darkness like you had a light, is what he says.
Yeah, but I think that to me, like that, you could choose that to mean something different.
Yeah.
That seemed okay. That's fair. That seemed textual to me, but it might be more subtextual then, because I've always bought into. But like, I don't know. It's still I don't know because I haven't read the books, but it a lot of it still feels super textual, like.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. I just know that in the book it is like actually textual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, please. I got nothing to say.
It's I think the other things we should probably talk a little bit about. So
Sure.
Abra and Dan, them as two characters that kind of Abra basically just finds Dan because she's a super child with psychic shine abilities and just writes hello on his little blackboard. It's just cute as hell.
Yeah.
And it's just their relationship is just I think captured really well. Like they've kind of it's hard not to have camaraderie with someone that you share this level of psychic power with. And it's again very Stephen King. Magical children is like a big thing of his.
There is a very innocent platonic love between Danny and Abra. Like
Uncle Dan.
That name is very much earned, right? Like
Yes.
again, me and Alan are not biologically related to Corbin in any way, shape, or form. But I think I can speak for both of us that for your children, Corbin, we take a fucking bullet for. I would take a bullet for your two kids, like in a heartbeat. I love your kids like they were family of mine, right? And it's it's not like that because obviously Abra is very far away and has no connection to Danny at all. But you get that sense of like, I love you and I am responsible for you. And I think that's a real it's very well captured in this movie of like
it's earned. They earn that relationship.
When he loses Abra, it's the only time since he's gotten sober that you buy that he is going to fucking he's gonna backlash because he fucked up. He fucked up with a person he loves. He truly someone died on his watch, but more important than that, he lost Abra. He lost, and like there's not for 1 second it's like why would you drink after that? Like you just buy it 100%, and I think that's really important. Which another thing I want to mention is this movie does a really fucking great job at tackling alcoholism in a way that is both believable, honest, and emotional.
You're gonna get that when both the director / writer and your lead actor are recovering alcoholics,
and the writer, and the writer of
really
the book material too. Everybody understands what recovering from alcoholism feels. Yeah, that's fair.
Right, and they really do a great job of making that seem realistic, and again, like not like a caricature in any way, which I think a lot of times like recovery can feel like that.
I mean, just look at Dan from his transformation. Like you see the classic, the 7 years pass, but he looks younger than when he first walks into Frasier. Between like him, getting there and then becoming sober. It's not just the emotional side, but also like just him in general, him walking around, his speech, the way he speaks. I've said it already once. Attention to detail in this film. It's out of this world good. Like they understood the important parts of the book that were like non-negotiable things that you have to, if you're going to do Dr. Sleep, these are the things you've got to have in there. But because it's a sequel to The Shining, we also have to have these things in there. How do I reconcile what are the actual important bits? And that alcoholism is absolutely one of them. And you have to have that because it ties directly to Jack.
Yeah.
Like it's directly tied there.
Well, and it speaks to this thing. Just really quickly, and I want to.
When you're done,
I know. We have to hit the thing that you definitely want to hit, and I want to hear you hit it. But it speaks in on a very human level. It speaks to the cycle that we see oftentimes with intergenerational stuff, right? We talked about The Shining. We talked about the domestic violence angle, right? The cycle of violence, that's intergenerational. Oftentimes in the same way, alcohol and drug abuse is intergenerational. We see because you pick up these lessons that we learn. And in the same way that Danny is picking up and passing on lessons to his proverbial children with Abra, he also is trying to break the cycle. And I think he does so successfully with his alcoholism. And I think it's a really beautiful cycle. A wheel, almost, if you could say. Ellen, let's talk about that wheel.
So Ka is a wheel. Another Ka being a wheel moment. How about when he's sitting in John Dalton's office? Did you guys know how strangely similar that office layout was to the office Jack was in The Shining? And how similar that interaction is, where it's a new lease on life, it's a new opportunity, it's his rebirth is supposed to start here. The wheel is grinding there. But what does Danny do? Dan actually breaks that.
Dan didn't
Beautiful.
forget the face of his father.
He did not. But so that line's in the book. Ka is a wheel. That is a very Stephen S. King line. If you ever hear the word Ka in any Stephen King adaptation, every Stephen King fan's gonna jump for joy because it's like, oh, they get it.
No. Jump for joy. That's a very interesting way of saying come in your pants, but
that's fair. But when Dick Halloran comes back the second time from the dead to talk to Danny in his time of need, and he just throws out "Ka's a wheel, Dan." I literally just started screaming. I'm like, oh my god, they understand.
I was just waiting for him to say, "Go then. There are other worlds than this." But we're here for it.
They can't go that hard.
Listen, man. It is the mention of Ka in a movie that doesn't suck ass is incredible. Incredible, right? Because the last time there's been Ka that's been mentioned, it's in the Dark Tower movie, which sucks ass. It's just not good. It doesn't do it tries to do all of the movies in a single movie, and it makes me want to die. Because that movie, that's a 7-book movie, right? That's 7 books.
It's a 90-minute 7-book movie.
Yeah. You can't do it. It's just not possible. You have to cut out every person who's ever been important to that, and you just go, here's Roland, played by the impeccable Idris Elba, and then some kid, right? The casting for those characters, fantastic. But anyway, I digress. Doc Halloran saying that gave more credence to Dark Tower than a 90-minute film did, and I just want to say, that's what's amazing. And this movie is very Dark Tower. It's very cyclical. It's very again. There's a reason why me and Alan again for those of you Dark Tower stands, for those of you Ka heads out there, for those of you Roland stands. For those of you who want to blow the horn of Gilead, there we go. That's a real reference for you people. For those of you who think Susanna is a real babe, no, never mind. She's no. Susanna is a real babe.
Yeah, but
anyway, this movie had me asking, who's who in that quartet? And we never really got me and Alan discussed the answers, but hey, on our Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook, go ahead and post your own answers if you're a Stephen King fan. That's right. We're engaging in episode, not just at the end crawl there.
There was also, I don't, have you read The Stand, Bobby?
I keep starting it and then feeling like it's a Herculean task, but I've re-downloaded it on Audible, and I will be finishing it soon. I was going to mention it in the end bit, but yeah, I'm starting. I restarted The Stand, and I'm ready to actually get through all the way through it.
I feel like there's a soft reference to The Stand in this film. Well, I mean, there's probably more than a soft reference, but near the end, I forget who says the line, but it says "people who stand." You need to have people who take a stand.
Yes, I did.
That kind of just stood out to me.
It felt like a yes. It felt like I also felt that, having knowing nothing about The Stand. Besides, I got up until the chapter where he's in the theater, which is very early days in the book.
Oh yeah, yes.
That's as far as I've gotten. I plan on finishing it this time around, though.
Good.
I need 24 hours of time because I listen to books at times 2 speed because I'm dyslexic, and my auditory learning is very good to make up for my other learning.
There you go. Well, speaking of learning, Bobby, how about you learn me how we rate this movie is?
How we rate these bad boys?
Yeah.
Well, that's
learn
a great
how we rate this bad
I would be happy to learn you how to rate these bad boys on a scale of 0 to 5 with half points allowed. So, of course, right, a 3.5 out of 5. Unimaginable for both Insidious The Last Key and this movie, but legal. But a 5.25? Unfortunately, that would break the scale. So therefore, no quarter points allowed. Starting with, dare I say it, Corbin.
I started last time.
Starting with, dare I say it, Alan.
No. I'll start. So I mentioned it last week, right? That we're all Stephen King fans, but I'm probably the least so. And a lot of that is because I've seen a lot of Stephen King movies, but I haven't read a lot of Stephen King books. And so you'll notice, I was a little absent from that last part of the discussion. I've mentioned it on the show many times. Dark Tower, eventually, maybe. But this movie I really, really loved, right? I'm a film fan first. I loved how it connected to the prior movie, The Shining. Similar, a lot of the things that made The Shining great make Doctor Sleep great, right? It's wonderfully directed. It's really well written. Every actor does their job and more. It is scary without being full of fear, which is kind of an interesting thing. Like, it's not a terrifying movie, but it's still a scary movie. And I think that you find that often with Stephen King in general. I think that sometimes, have like one scary moment, maybe, but a lot of times it's more of like an overarching thing. And this movie does that. Yeah, and this movie does that really, really well as well, because even though at the end of it I was thinking, like, this movie wasn't really scary, but I definitely still label it a horror movie, and there's something to that. And I will say maybe the theatrical edition might have some faults, but I've never seen it. And so I will go ahead and give the director's cut of Dr. Sleep a 5 out of 5. I absolutely loved it. I could watch it again right now. And I think the double feature of The Shining and Dr. Sleep is so much better than anybody could have predicted it would be. And for that, I think it deserves the 5.
I'm just going to go on second and just right on, just not even make a whole thing about this. Just agree. It's a 5 out of 5. This movie was advertised to me by a friend as a spiritual journey, right? And this movie makes me feel things. And I think, and I didn't mention it in the other part because I was too busy gushing and having fun and like enjoying it. But this movie makes me feel things. And I think a movie that can truly make you feel, right? And like, you don't force it, it forces you, I think is truly a great movie. And this movie does that. It's so good. It is like again, watch the director's cut. I'm pretty sure it's the only version of the movie I've ever watched. And, there's a reason why I understand why they probably couldn't make convince you to watch a 3-hour movie, because it is 3 hours, but you're never going to know that when you're watching that movie, because you're going to be sucked in so hard. It's going to suck you so hard, and you're going to love every second of it. 5 out of 5. The only reason I'm not breaking the scales for this is because I didn't break the scale for The Shining, and this movie is a perfect pairing, right? It is a perfect pairing, and I think they exist together, and they should exist equal together. So 5 out of 5.
I mean, I'm in the same boat here. It's absolutely a 5. I knew it was a 5 like half hour or so in, and the reason I say that is it just. I have a note here. It basically took like 2 hours of a 3-hour film, 2/3 of the film, before there was a substantial enough deviation from the novel for me to like really like point it out within my own notes that I took. That's amazing that that's even something that was done in general, that it was able to stay this true while then also making sure that it connects to this movie that has a completely different ending. The ending of the book of, I'm not going to spoil it, of Dr. Sleep is vastly different than what we experience here, but it makes sense. And that's mastery right there. That's not just like, this is a good filmmaker, this is a good story, this is a good writer. That is mastery of your craft. And it has to be lauded for that. It's a 5 out of 5. Absolutely. Loved it.
Wonderful.
But hey.
But that's not all we do on this show. No.
Ka is a wheel. So, Corbin, please.
We also discuss whether or not a movie is essential to horror as a whole. Now, for anybody that skipped ahead to this portion, this section is completely spoiler-free. And our scores so far were 5 out of 5 for all three of us, right? A perfect 15 out of 15, as it were. Going in the now classic Uno reverse order, Alan, is this movie essential to horror?
I think if we did this show in 2019, we would probably say no. And I say that because this movie did not have very good reception per se. At the box office, it kind of didn't do too terribly well. Reviews are middling. It didn't necessarily... I don't know necessarily that we would be having the same talk. I also think that I am biased here. Straight up. If you haven't understood that I really like Stephen King stuff by now, I do. So I'm almost always inclined to rate higher and essential and call things essential if it's Stephen King, because he himself, Stephen King is essential to horror, okay? Like it's one of those things that it's hard when you have a property of his to not say, well, of course it is. It's Stephen fucking King we're talking about. But that's where execution comes into play. And that's where this movie has it in flying colors. It executes on every part of Dr. Sleep that it needs to. Yes, it is essential.
Bobby.
Is this movie essential? Well, I think it's important to recognize that this movie not only is a sequel to the book The Shining, but also a sequel to the movie The Shining. Not only that, Stephen King likes this movie, right? Which almost essentially gives him, after having years of disdain about The Shining by Stanley Kubrick, almost gives the thumbs up to The Shining by Stanley Kubrick, right? For these two reasons, how it somehow manages to get even Stephen King on board with The Shining, as well as it being a sequel to not one but two admittedly divergent properties. Of course it's essential, right? And that's not even getting to the personal reasons, right? This movie, again, it makes me feel things. It is an incredible film. It is really, really robust. Watch the director's cut. Just set aside 3 hours of your day. You've got nothing better to do on a Saturday. Even if you do, not on a Saturday night, right? What are you going to do? Go out to a bar, have fun with friends? No. Bring them in. Make them watch Dr. Sleep with you.
Bring the bar to you.
Bring the bar to you. Everybody else will swear sobriety by the end of this, but they'll all love it nonetheless. Yeah, essential, absolutely. Unbelievably essential. I don't care if I'm biased, right? I watched this shortly within the year that it came out, and I think I loved it then. I love it now. Yes. Corbin.
So, I think that you kind of started getting going with the main element that I would have, which is that this is a really, really great sequel, right? And The Shining, I would say, both the book and the movie would probably have been lumped under the label of doesn't need and couldn't possibly utilize a sequel territory, right? I can't imagine if you ask somebody, 10, 12, 15, 20, 30, 40 years ago, do you think The Shining should have a sequel? That the majority of people would say yes.
I don't even think Stephen King would want it.
Stephen King didn't even consider a sequel for over 20 years. Yeah, exactly. And so I think that, this movie kind of, it snags the Herculean task of not only adapting, right, and doing it well, but by being a sequel to a Kubrick movie, right? And Kubrick especially is he's one of the greatest directors of all time. So making a sequel to one of his movies is whew, what a task, right? What an effort that you must come in, because you're going to be compared to him, right? Your movie is going to be compared to his movie. And this movie manages to not only stand on its own as a sequel to that in a way that is great, but it also does a lot of things that sequels don't manage to do, right? By, it's showing the evolution of characters, it's showing the passage of time, it is throwing back to the first movie in ways that actually make sense, and it never is really like holding your hand or explaining things that didn't need to be explained or throwing things in just as a gag. And I think that those are things, especially in the horror world, that sequels could learn from. And so I'm going to say that, yes, Dr. Sleep is an essential movie, an essential sequel. I loved it, and I think you should too.
There are not many movies where I'm like really pulling for one to make it to the Hall of Fame. I'll be honest, this is one where I finished the movie and I was like, it should. Boy, it should. I really hope I'm aligned
I'm really
with these
glad.
guys.
I knew Alan was going to give it to me. I was slightly worried about Corbin, but it has it here. But hey, not only do we give deserved movies a chance in our essential Hall of Fame, we also decide what we've been up to and where we can find you guys. So hey, Alan, where can we find you?
You can find me at a seal punter just about anywhere. My wife and I, this past weekend, watched all of Wednesday on Netflix.
Me too.
Great show. Jenna hard carries the show, but she's great. It's a fun 8-episode romp. Really good. Watch it. It's like 8-ish hours of your life, worth every second.
It's
very,
so
very
fun. Jenna Ortega is so good at it.
It's like imagine the Addams Family meets Harry Potter, and that's basically what you get. Which I didn't know I wanted that, but I did apparently. It's great.
It's a YA novel with gore.
Yeah, pretty decent gore too.
So it's a YA novel.
Oh man. Other than that though, still been playing a bunch of God of War, trying to finish that out finally, because it's like 40-something hours. It's so much longer than the first one. And Dark Tide came to Game Pass on PC, so I've been playing that too. What a game, man. It's got graphical problems right now that are not good, but the gameplay itself, man,
I mean, how can you beat right? Left 4 Dead, right? It's still
the combat has more impact. Like, that was always my thing with Left 4 Dead I hated, is like, if you ever use melee weapons in Left 4 Dead 2, they just felt like you had like a foam, like a foam like thing, a pool noodle that you were hitting zombies with.
You got there,
You fucking feel like you're hitting zombies with swords in this game. It's really like it's very
it's
very
Nurgle demons, right?
Yeah, for the most part. Yeah. And you're just chopping them up.
Yeah.
Yep. And I'm playing as a psyker because of course. Why not?
That's a good point.
But yeah, it's a ton of fun. You got Game Pass on PC. Check it out. You can download it right now. It's a ton of fun. A seal punter, just about anywhere.
You can find me primarily at twitch.tv/theredweenie. You can also find me on other socials at the Red Weenie. Not on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook, but other places you can find me. Go ahead, look for it. I'm on there other places. I might switch my Instagram to be that. We'll see what happens. I've been playing roughly 19 hours of Pokemon Scarlet. Other than that, I recently went and, lived life stuff. Also watched Wednesday. It's incredibly fun. But yeah, eventually I will get back on Twitch when we decide that we're going to raid again for Destiny and other stuff. But yeah, for the time being, follow me at twitch.tv.
Nice. You can find me on Twitter or on Mastodon at Corbangrang or at Bolters and Bourbon if you are looking to talk about Warhammer. What have I been up to? None of the, maybe surprising, none of the things that you guys have been up to. Usually we're pretty even on this, but I haven't managed to play literally anything in the last week. and I have not watched Wednesday yet, though Alan's description of it lines up exactly with what I've heard of its description, which is Addams Family plus Harry Potter. I don't know if he sniped that from somewhere else or if he came to the same conclusion, but I've heard that from many places.
It is impossible to come up with a different conclusion. I want to be very clear on that.
All right.
It is not. It's the least original thought you could possibly.
You'll think that, and you'll think you're very smart to think of that, but everybody has thought of it.
Okay. So, with that in mind, right, what have I been doing? So I have been spending my evenings building models as typical, and I have been spending my days, working through the Christmas season, right? We're recording this on December 5th. It's the 5th day of, secular Advent, I would say. And, spending my weekends doing Christmas things, seeing Santa over and over and over. I have 2 kids, so like there are some things that you just like do. Going to the Christmas market, drinking a lot of Christmas beer and eating cheese, and it's been great. But that's pretty much what my free time has been. But with that in mind, follow me at Corbangerang, at Boulders and Bourbon. I talk about Warhammer and Halo primarily. You can also find the podcast at Essential Scares. We are active on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and we use that word loosely. We'd love it if you gave us a follow and, shot us a message if you have any suggestions for us. In the bios for all of our socials, we also have a link to our Discord and the other socials and the podcast. We're talking on the Discord pretty much every day about movies, music, and games. And we're always taking suggestions for future franchises or themes or movies to cover. Which next week, right, you may notice Dr. Sleep, that's the end of it, right? So we're moving on to a new duology, the mid-2000s Texas Chainsaw Massacre remix.
What comes up must come down.
We're going in release order, so we're starting with Texas Chainsaw and then doing the beginning, which is the prequel.
Oh, no.
And
It's gonna be so cool.
I am so excited. I think Alan's so excited, and Bobby is dreading the next 2 weeks.
Oh,
and
no.
that makes me more excited.
Yep.
So make sure you tune in. But
everybody
that's it for
knows
this week.
Angry Bobby are better episodes.
They are.
Thank you so much for listening or watching. If you like the show, give us a thumbs up, a rating, a subscribe, share with your friends and family, and be sure to follow along. Thank you to Alan and Bobby for being on the show. I have been your host, Corbin, and this has been Essential Scares.
Play that breakdown, baby.